Michael, so in Simply Simon Suppers, there's a whole chapter on dessert. Tell us how you believe dessert can fit into a healthy lifestyle.
you know, I mean, dessert's tricky because everybody loves it, but sometimes it's not always the best thing for you.
Yeah,
But
right. I
um,
think I heard Angela say that.
yeah, it's like, I mean, who doesn't like dessert? I like it's funny as I've gotten older. Like when I was a kid, oddly enough, did not have much of a sweet tooth, and like after I turned 50, so for the past 5 years, like I crave dark chocolate now. Like I don't understand. I never even ate dark chocolate my whole life. And then at 50, I'm like, God, I need some dark chocolate. Something with my brain happened. You try to moderate those things as best as you can. I have two grandkids now, and kids love sugar. Like, I mean, like like Emmy is 5 now, and like I remember when we're like, man, she eats everything. She eats vegetables. She eats sushi. She eats like everything. And then all of a sudden, one day, she discovered sugar, and she was like, um, oh, like I'd make her something. Like she would cook in the kitchen with me, and like I used to make these little like smoothies for us that were just fresh fruit and blah blah blah. And then in the morning and like Greek yogurt or whatever. And then she would be like, pop up, honey. Like it was like she discovered sweet and she's like, everything else sucks. I just want sweet. So, and I think all of us are like that a little bit to a point, but it's just about, again, it's about balance. I mean, like, the mental health, I think, was a great thing to bring up too, because all these things are about balance. It's like, I wake up every day. I I try to get my workout in. I try to meditate. I try to stretch, and then like start my day. Because that's what helps bring me clarity as much as the food does. The thing about dessert is, for me at least, if I have one bite, if I have one or two bites, I'm good. But like, it's easy to have 10. And when you cut sugar out of your diet, you realize kind of how evil sugar could be, because it's like the only thing I've ever cut out of my diet, caffeine included at one point, that like I had a migraine for 5 days afterwards because it just I feel
Right.
crushes your system to some point. So I'm just careful with it. And I think that's how everybody, it's easier said than done. I mean, don't get me wrong. I will eat a quart of ice cream in a sitting. In Long Island, I mean, I get them everywhere, but they have those Tate's cookies. Have you ever seen the Tate's chocolate chip cookies?
Yeah. Yes.
Um,
Yep.
I mean, I could house a bag of those things like that, like.
Yeah.
So what I try to do with desserts now, it's like, okay, I take 2 cookies, I set them down, and then I like give them to somebody, and I'm like, hide them. I don't care where you hide them. I don't care if I ever find them. Someone will find them at some point, but just get them away from me.
Yeah.
Because I don't have willpower with those things as much as I tend to with most other things.
How about this? Your favorite food memory. So I'm just going to give you mine because it kind of ties into yours, Michael, and into Angela and Anthony's. Is coming home on a Saturday night, maybe out having a nice time with friends, and knowing that there is going to be a pot of sauce on the stove, and Mom always left one loaf of bread. So out of the 9 of us kids, we knew that Saturday night you could come in and do a quick dip of bread and warm up some sauce or something before you went to bed. And when the loaf was gone, it was done. You couldn't go in the stash of any more bread, but whatever was on the table. So I think it was her way of driving us home earlier than later, so that everybody could dip their bread in the sauce. So that's just one of my favorite food memories. Favorite food memory that you have?
I don't want to draft off of you, John, but yeah, we used to call it Sugan bread, and I don't. My mom didn't do that on Saturday night, but I remember every Sunday morning while the sauce was cooking, as the sauce was cooking for hours, you can get some bread and start to dunk, or get a ladle out and pour it over the bread or something. That was always extremely fun.
Great memory. All right, Michael, I'm going to you. I'm going to give Angela a chance to think.
Well, since we're all talking about Sunday sauce, I'm going to change it. But that, like, Sunday sauce and Cavatel, that's probably my number one. But right there, I'm going to say tied at one is, being Greek and Sicilian, baklava was a thing. So my mom, there's not a doubt in my mind, I've had millions of baklavas. all over Greece, America, you name it, I've had it. No one makes a baklava as good as my mom, period. Like, I've never given anybody a piece of her baklava that didn't say this is the best baklava I've ever eaten. So when I was probably around 12, she was like, I'm going to teach you how to make it. So she taught me how to make it. I actually picked it up really quickly, which was great because my mother, because she is of Mediterranean descent, doesn't always have, she had a quick fuse, let's just say. So, but we grew up in a neighborhood, I was born the first part in Cleveland Heights, and my dad grew up in Cleveland Heights, and then my parents moved to the West Side because my dad worked at Ford. So I ended up, in my, early teen years on the West Side, and all of our neighbors, like, we were Greek and Sicilian, and everybody else on our street was like Irish or Polish, basically. So the people that lived on our street, my mom was going to teach them how to make baklava, and this is more of, I guess, a food fail memory than maybe a food memory. But watching everybody but my mother and I make baklava was like high comedy, at that age. It was like they just couldn't do it. The philo's breaking. My mom, she's getting aggravated. She's like, "What's wrong with you?" She's cursing at them in Greek, which they don't understand, but I do. I'm like, "Oh, that's the word she says when she's really pissed at dad." That she is, and it was kind of like, looking back, it was kind of like one of those moments where I'm like, oh man, I'm good in the kitchen, because at 12 years old, I could, for whatever reason, handle this phyllo dough and make the baklava at almost the same pace as my mother. But everybody else she's trying to teach to make it to, it's an epic fail. So it was really the first time in a kitchen that I realized, like, I'm really comfortable here.
All right, Angela.
All right. I mean, obviously the sauce and bread, how can that not be it? That's where my brain was first. Even sometimes it was like Wonder Bread. I remember being on Wonder Bread and it was still amazing. But there's one memory I have where my mother's parents, our mother's parents, lived in Parma on the west side of Cleveland. And we lived on the east side of Cleveland in Mayfield. And if you're from Cleveland, you know that making the journey from one side of the city to the other is like the Odyssey. Like, it feels so far apart. And so oftentimes we didn't see our grandparents save for Sundays. That was the day that we went over to see my mom's parents every week. And we would sit and chat with them, and then we would eat dinner together. And it was, always our family as a whole meeting with them. So there was a big group of us. And when Joe, our brother, was in high school and able to drive, we were asking my grandfather and grandmother about some of the recipes, and they said, why don't you guys come over here next Saturday and we can show you. And so we drove over there on a Saturday, and I remember we started with gnocchi, and they put like a big pile of flour, on the kitchen table, and they just started talking Joe and I through each of the recipes that they make each week. And I remember being really struck in that moment because it was just the four of us. Their kitchen in their house was always such a large gathering. Like, I hadn't had that intimate sort of connection with them until that day, strangely, because it was always just such a big group gathering. And so it's always stuck out in my mind that day and how special it was. And I still make the recipes I learned from them on that day, for my own kids. And that was a really special moment for me.
How about your favorite, or what you would consider to be a highlight of Cleveland cuisine?
Well, we have to confront this question a lot, because when we shoot things in Cleveland, we're typically working with a lot of people not from Cleveland, and some of whom are new to Cleveland. So we're very much like, ambassadors to sort of all things Cleveland, including the food. And that's always a big part of the experience for everybody. Cleveland has amazing food, and certainly Lola has always been a highlight of where we like to take people, where we like to go. But I will say this in terms of, like, sort of day-to-day food that new people get to experience when they come to Cleveland. The things that I notice they respond most strongly to are the classics, right? It's like Slyman's corned beef. Everybody's like, oh my God, I've never had corned beef like this. And Presti's pizza too, they love it. Like, a lot of people aren't familiar with like the old school, like, Italian bakery pizza, which is on a sheet pan and very little cheese, served room temperature. many people don't eat that type of pizza regularly. So when you give them that from Presti's, they have a similar reaction to the Slimer's corned beef. It's like something common and simple, something they've had many, many times before, but for some reason, this version of that is like really striking to them.
Yeah. Hey, so Anthony, I have a friend of mine who's a photographer, and I had him take photos for my courtroom, and he blew them up sepia, and one of them in the very corner that, as I sit on my bench, I could see to the right is Presti's. Just the sign, and it's a shot down Murray Hill or up Murray Hill, and Presti's right there. So when you said that, it brought a smile to my face. Yeah. Angela, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think another one that came to mind that people respond to coming in from out of town on our cruise are the sandwiches at Panini's. Because it's almost like the audacity of putting everything into one sandwich and being able to eat it that way. It's just like mind blowing to them. And so that's always, and also it tends to be on nights when the crew is going out and letting off steam together. And then you find yourself at a Panini's at 1 a.m. And
yeah, never eat one of those sober, by the way.
No, right?
Yeah.
No.
Well, the problem is everything we're naming right now isn't the healthiest food in the world, but for some reason,
I remember the first time I ate one of those sandwiches sober, I'm like, what the hell is it? This is what I heard.
Right. Moderation.
You don't eat one of those sober. Our brother Joe is like the only person that loves panini sober. I don't know why. But
It's like you shouldn't see Paninis in the light of day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Good memory. How about yourself, Michael?
For me, I always think it's interesting because, most mid to major cities have some form of a little Italy. But I think when I bring people to Cleveland, especially chefs, not a lot of towns have that Eastern European background that we have. So I always bring them to the market and get them some kielbasa because it always blows them away. I go to the back part of the market to Frank's and get a bratwurst on a hard roll with Burtman's mustard, which is always to me that screams Cleveland. And then I used to bring them to Hot Sauce Williams, but it closed. But a classic Cleveland Polish boy, the kielbasa with the hots. I think, I don't know this, but my guess is that somehow the Panini or that place in Pittsburgh that does them too was based off this Polish boy sandwich, which is a Cleveland sandwich, which is, a bun, kielbasa, coleslaw, fries, and hot sauce, on the bun, and then the Polish girl is the same thing, but with minus fries, add pulled pork. But that was it's kind of like a Cleveland staple sandwich that used to be around in the East Side old school barbecue joints or some of the food carts and stuff like that. So when I bring them to Cleveland, I guess Eastern European sausages is probably where I go, and the great choices of mustards. And Sokolowski's isn't around anymore, but I used to bringing them to Sokolowski's and get them a pierogi and a stuffed cabbage and that kind of stuff, and then take a giant nap.
Yeah, there you go. The nap in there. All right, so here's the last question. Throw you a curveball. So in January, in my Fit to Practice article I'm starting to write, I think my article is going to be, what's your jam? So I'm going to ask the three of you. You're going to work out. You're in the car driving by yourself and you're singing a song, even though you're not hitting the notes. And you're thinking, I just am killing it here with this song. What's your jam? Who's your artist? Who's your song? Because maybe I'll plug you in my January just with your jam. So if I'm gonna go, my jam is Bruce Springsteen. I'm gonna pop the boss on. I'm gonna sing some song as I'm driving, and that's my jam. So what's your jam?
God, I was born in '69, so I am an '80s kid. I am not afraid to say that I do have a devoted love to the hair bands. So to me, it would probably be Van Halen.
Nice.
Over the years, Sammy has become a dear friend, so I tend to lean towards Sam. But Sam or Dave Van Halen, I'm happy either way. It would probably be Van Halen, very loud. And the good thing is when you sing the David Lee Roth versions, you could miss the notes because he always did too. So I don't feel bad about it. I know that the Eddie Van Halen and Alex Van Halen and all the great musicians in the back will overcome my lack of lyrical talents.
All right, Angela, what's your jam?
Oh man, I mean, I would go with the Boss as well. I like anything that reminds me of growing up in Cleveland, and I think that Bruce Springsteen is as close as I can get to that. And that's typically when I find myself shouting at the top of my lungs in a car. Is like when I have that nostalgic quality
That's
to the
awesome.
music. And I think that's a great answer. I do it with you too a lot. I think what else? I like a little Oasis.
You're gonna throw a little Swiftie in there? You're gonna sing some Taylor Swift for us, Angela, maybe?
I know. I wish like I was as versed with Taylor Swift as most folks are. I let my daughter school me in that though.
There you go.
I mean, seeing how we're all from Cleveland, we should be saying Bone Thugs and Machine Gun Kelly, by the way.
Right.
Right? Yeah, that's it.
Well, it's funny. Like 2 nights ago, I just took my 13-year-old son to the Travis Scott concert. He loves Travis Scott, but that's not my jam. Listen. I don't mean to be repetitive, but I have to say this with you because growing up, you, John, were like the biggest Bruce Springsteen fan that I knew, and being a couple years older, you were into Bruce Springsteen earlier than I was, and a lot of my passion for him and my discovery of him came through sort of your interest and passion for him. So I remember that very clearly. And it's been an enormous presence in my life ever since, his music. And still to this day, he's the jam.
Very good. Well, I love that I had a little bit of influence on you two. So, hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, for making time for us. Really excited that the three of you could join us. And tell Joe he missed out, but we missed him. And you guys were awesome. I just love the opportunity to do this. So I hope you all, if you're traveling, have safe travels for Thanksgiving, but enjoy the family over Thanksgiving and the holidays coming up as well. Thank you.